Alright, welcome to the final installment of This Is How You Do the Week 2 GIS Lab for Earth Sciences 188B. The last thing that I'm going to show you guys how to do is start digitizing some shape files. What we are going to want to do is make sure that the shape files we are working with are displayed. So offset moraines, I can see that's displayed because it's checked there. Same thing with faults. Let's change the color of these to something that's a little bit more signature of faults here. And we're also going to want to make sure that the display, or the coordinate system for those two files is the same for each file. Okay, that looks good. And that those are also the same as the data frame coordinate system. Awesome. So we're going to go ahead and start editing. Like we talked about before, we can select individual files here, which is not as useful as actually going and selecting the space where all our data is stored. And for the case of these two things, that's in this personal geo database. We can confirm that by going to the data source tab of our table of contents and expanding this a little bit and seeing that moraines and faults are indeed in the same geodatabase here, which I know because I named it geodatabase me. Back to the editor, start editing, go down to that geodatabase, click OK, and it's going to come up with these two features here. I can select them and then select the appropriate set of construction tools here. Sorry that my thing is being irritating here. Just go ahead and inject that. So, and I have all these different construction tools. I can draw circles, right? Very nice. I don't really want to draw a circle though, so I'm going to delete that with the delete key, not the backspace key. You could try to freehand these faults here, but not that easy. What I recommend you do is use the line tool, which is going to allow you to draw points and connect those points in a line. So we'll zoom in to this first fault here, which looks like a very nice one. We can see this clear scarp as evidenced by sort of the shading here on the shaded side of the scarp. It looks to me like this side is up and that side is down. And that also makes some sense, right, given the fact that suddenly the river gets much narrower when it starts to cross the part of the fault that is being uplifted relative to the part that is being downdropped. So I'm comfortable with that interpretation. And I'm also pretty comfortable with that being a fault, right? And that's going to mean that when I map this fault, I'm going to want to assign it a high confidence attribute. So I'm going to open up my attribute table. I just did that by right-clicking on faults and going to open attribute table. I'll dock that at the bottom to give myself plenty of room to work with. Make it a little bit smaller. And then I'm going to start sort of tracing that line down here. And you'll notice I started not on the other side of the road. I can't see this fault actively cutting the road, so I don't really want to map it through the road. I only want to map the fault where I really see it. Like even here, it sort of dies out a little bit, and I don't want to just like put faults everywhere like I think the faults should connect, right? I'm not going to draw the fault through the river because I can't see the fault from remote sensing imagery there, but I can see the fault here, and I'm going to give that a high confidence value. Same thing with this thing down here, right? I'll trace it along for a while, and I'm going to stop lazily here so I don't have to refresh the window. And this little guy here too, there's a little splay here, and see how it's snapping to that vertex there? That's because I have something set up, and so do you guys, where things snap to one another, so edges know where they are. I'm going to call that one high and this one high too. And I can select things both in the attribute table by selecting these far left buttons, or by going up to my selection tool up in the top. And oops, I'm still on a different thing here. Now my arrow has changed. I can select them by some rectangle, and it'll also display them here. It's also handy to sometimes just display the selected attributes in your attribute table, which you do down here. Again, if you did not already add the field that is confidence, you cannot do that while you're editing. You're going to need to stop editing and then come back down and add the field and then start editing again. Okay, so there's a couple high confidence faults. Now let's map some faults that are we're less confident in. So go back over here, select my draw tool, pan over to where I see some more faults here. Go back to my line, and I don't know, maybe there's this fault here. I can see some change in vegetation, but I don't know if I would really call it a fault, so I'm going to put low confidence on that one. And then maybe one more right here. And I didn't really like how I jogged there, so I want to edit that. So I'm going to go up to the editor, select this little edit tool, double click that feature, and then go over the vertices and actually manipulate the vertices that way by clicking and dragging after my cursor has changed to this square thing there, right? And that last vertex I don't really like, so I'm going to right click that and delete that vertex, and then just click off it to finish. Great. So let's just save these edits. And the other thing I want to do is eventually, oh, and I'm going to call this one mid, just to give myself some things to display. I'm going to want to go ahead and to start displaying these by the confidence that I have in them. So I'm going to select symbology, go to categories, choose the value field of confidence, then I'm going to click add all values. I'm going to want this one to be a solid line with a little bit more thickness. I'll call it 1.5. This guy I'm going to want to be a dashed sort of line, military boundary, I like that. And mid down here. Oh, wait a minute. Mid I want in the middle, and I also want that to be a military installation. I want my low line to be on the bottom and to have a more dashy type line. How about neighborhood boundary? Slightly more dashed, right? And I moved things up and down with these arrow keys here. You can also click and drag them, or at least you used to be able to. It looks like not anymore. This all other values is going to display lines that you haven't yet assigned attributes for, or lines that you've mislabeled potentially, as in you misspelled high, middle, or low, or even you didn't get the capitals the same as you did here. You can add those in by clicking all other values, but I sort of want to identify them so that I know when I've mistyped things. So I'm going to pick some funky color for them, assign it some big line width. How about that guy right there? That's pretty obvious there. So that'll sort of be a red flag to me that I forgot to add an attribute when I'm doing more mapping later. Also, these two things I want to be the same red. I want everything to be the same red. I just want to have the line style be different. So I'm going to right click the symbol, go down to properties for all symbols, and just change the color to the same red. Okay, apply, bada bing, bada boom. So that's it. You've got lots of faults to edit there. The other thing that you're going to want to do is go ahead and edit or add in, there's some more of those wonderful faults. Add in some moraine crests, which are indeed offset, and you're going to end up needing to generate topo profiles for these moraine crests, which is going to require you to also make another shapefile called something moraines points, HC moraines points. Alright, so let's take a look at where these moraine crests are. They're very nicely defined by this change in vegetation from the sunnier to the less sunny side. I'm guessing that's what that is. We zoom in a little bit more here. You can see this nice ridge line. I think this is a pretty good level to work at these on, this level of zoom here. And this looks more pixelated probably on this movie screen just because of the resolution that I'm recording this video on. So now I want to go over and select offset moraines. If for some reason you started editing in faults, right? I drew my moraine crest and it was in faults and I didn't notice, right? I would see that that was a red line, and I would say, whoops, that's the wrong feature. And I would come over to this selection tool, select that, and then select what I'm doing my editing on, right? So what you've selected here is just what attribute table is selected. What you've selected over in this features thing is what you're actually doing work on. And then I would right-click it, or click off of it, or just generally try to switch back up and find this copy option. Then I would click off of it and click paste. I would want to paste that into offset moraines, right? And there I can see that there's actually 2 lines now. If we zoom in more, that'll be a little bit more obvious. Or if instead I change this to something wider, right, we can see that that's there. And now I want to delete that fault line, so I'm going to take off the offset moraines line, go back to my selection tool, delete the faults line, and you'll notice because my moraines isn't displayed, I can't edit it over here, and I am going to want to edit it, so I'll display it to show it again. And now let's draw the other moraine on the other side here. And we'll bring this guy across something like this. Alright, very good. And now let's go down to the other side, and you can imagine doing the same thing. Now this other side is a little bit nicer to actually measure horizontal offsets. You'll want to take the moraine up a little bit farther than this. And also keep in mind that I'm very quickly and lazily digitizing this thing, so you may want to do a little bit better job. I can find the measure tool up near my binoculars here, and it's going to let me measure between 2 points. And I sort of want to measure along the offset direction parallel to the fault plane to get that, and I come up with something like 30-ish meters. Great. Close out of that, and we will call that a lesson. So hopefully this helps people out. I spent more time than I would like to on this video. We're also working on typing up a guide, and I think I'm going to make that a public Google Doc so that you can all add in things and work together on that and share it for future generations to know and love how to use ArcGIS. That's it. I look forward to seeing all your maps in a couple of weeks.